Over the past 3 weeks, President Trump has signed a little more than 80 executive orders that's leading to many changes across the country.
To break down some of the key takeaways this week, joining us now is Scott MacFarlane. Good to see you, Scott.
Hey, good to see you too. Remember when Fridays were calmer? Remember when they were quieter? Did that ever happen?
We're calling this Executive Action Fridays now because we've been seeing those get snuck in at the last minute. But look, I wanted to dive right in here. You know, one of the major talking points we're seeing is President Donald Trump and Elon Musk and his influence. In fact, we saw today Time Magazine's provocative cover putting Elon right behind the president's desk on their cover. And I just wanted to get your take on an unelected official having this much influence.
That really is the point of contention, I think, that is unifying Democrats who have any number of different concerns with the cuts that are being proposed to our local federal workforce and to federal agencies. There is a unifying concern. Elon Musk is operating outside the confines, restrictions, and rules of the federal government. Congress has to approve of shutdowns of federal agencies. Congress has to see fit that the money they've appropriated, that they've spent, gets used the way Congress ordered it to be used. And that's been unsettled in this Elon Musk era. But I'll tell you something that's being missed through the course of this week. They're still on a fast track to the return to work policies Trump and Musk want, requiring so many of our local federal workers to go back to the offices, be it here in D.C., Bethesda, Silver Spring, Arlington, Alexandria. You know what that does to local traffic and what that will do to those who over the last 5 years decided to move to Hagerstown, to Harper's Ferry, to Baltimore, rather than make the closer commute to an office they didn't have to go into anymore in D.C. They have a decision to make: quit the job or make a commute that can be particularly painful.
So, Scott, let's expand on that, because when we think about federal workers having to go back to the office, Mayor Bowser, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser, this was something that she too advocated for and was very much in alignment with the president on this issue of getting federal workers back into the offices, because so many buildings, as she described it, were being left vacant, which was then having an impact on local mom and pop shops that depended on the traffic in and around downtown. You talked about the traffic impact. What sort of economic impact can we expect? And really, what does this mean for local services as well?
Yeah, how about that? Mayor Bowser and the president on the same page. In fact, they had conversations about this after the inauguration. The mayor has been advocating for a federal return to work policy for quite some time. Not satisfied with the empty buildings the federal government has, from Penn Quarter to Federal Center, or the restaurants and businesses that need those buildings to be full. Tell you another player in all this. MARC trains have been nearly empty, some of them going north and south. Metro has had some emptier than they'd like trains. Those get filled up with a federal return to work policy. That could mean more money into the Maryland and Virginia state coffers and into the D.C. tax base. That's a big winner economically for those governments.
We wanted to talk about potentially the president closing the Department of Education. We saw House Democrats being barred from entering earlier today. That just happened this afternoon. I wanted to get your take, hear what you're hearing out on Capitol Hill about all of this.
You're going to see more of that next week, more Democratic coalitions of Democratic lawmakers going to federal offices trying to confront those who are making cuts and having a literal closed door. What happened today at the Department of Education was really provocative by both sides. You had Democrats with cameras in their hands knocking on doors, demanding to go into the Department of Education for a confrontation. That is provocative, potentially impactful, but the doors weren't opened. The security kept them out, which is also provocative because federal lawmakers typically have access to the federal buildings they fund and authorize. This will continue over the coming days. At this point, Democrats, including our local Maryland and Virginia Democrats, the only power they have is to message, to communicate, and they see this as one way of getting an attention.
Scott, last question for you before we let you go. Are we here? What are Republicans saying about the president's move and trying to shape the federal workforce? Do they support his position? Are they standing by him?
This is a political winner for people outside of our area who have maybe a caricature of what the federal workforce is, or just view Washington as one monolith, and they conflate federal workers with people who have political positions. So for members of Congress from Tennessee to Texas to California, in some cases, they don't mind championing this, even though it's going to eventually impact their constituents. And then perhaps the sentiments change.
All right, Scott MacFarlane for us tonight. We appreciate your time, your expertise. Happy Friday, my friend. We'll see you soon.